Welcome in. Week 17 in the books. Kind of feels weird saying that because week 17 used to be we're going into
the end of the
playoffs. Now
season.
there's
Yeah,
a week 18 with lots of playoff implications. Going to get into those for you tonight. Couple top draft, top of the draft scenarios.
yeah.
Could be looking at a new number one. Right, I think
It's getting interesting.
There's a way Chicago could get to the number one pick in the NFL draft. And then the NFL moving the schedules around. That's kind of. I'm not sure if I like this or not. Like everybody in Week 18 is TBD as far as the schedule and when they're going to play. And
just announced it. Yeah.
They just announced it, and it's like, okay, well, we got to make our plans. But I think I do like it because no one wants to watch. Bad teams play on Sunday Night Football, right?
Right. Especially in the last week. A team whose coach is going to get fired anyway. Nobody's going to watch that
garbage game and nobody's engaged. But even if your team's out of it, and let's say your backups are in or whatever, you can go watch another game on at the same time. Like the Bills Patriots are scheduled at 1, just announced 1 p.m. game Sunday. So if you can always just throw that on because they're both going to be playing. They're not going to be sitting starters most likely. So yeah, keeps you engaged as a fan. So I think I do like that everything's TBD last week.
Flex it up. Yeah, I'd rather that than have these crappy Thursday and Sunday night games that we've had lately, it seems. So for half of the season at least, let's try and figure it out in a better way. And I think that's a good way to do it. The Flex Saturday games were fun too. So that's
right.
They got to put some good games on there.
Right. Now college football in the books. The championship, I think, is usually it's on Monday. What about the college football championship? When's that scheduled?
It's next Monday, right? So it's next, whatever that is. What's today? The 2nd. So the 7th,
right?
The 8th. The 9th? It's the Monday. Today's the
Monday,
2nd.
The 9th, 7:30. So there is no NFL Monday night game
Monday night
for that reason. So they take the Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
TCU at Georgia. That was really fun to watch as well.
Both games were crazy.
Sterling's not with us, so we can't pick on him about Michigan.
Michigan. Oh, man. I was rooting for TCU just as the underdog. I wanted them to win. I still want them to win. I want them to
win.
Ohio
State. So. They got robbed. But they beat themselves. But
you missed a field goal.
You missed a field goal, but also you gotta get a little closer for your kicker.
Yeah. Oh, well,
this is it, man. This is the moment. You gotta. And that last few series they had, that last few plays for Ohio State was pitiful in my opinion. But still, they dominated all day. It just hurts because Ohio State's been in this position numerous times, but never got over the hump. And now that's the storyline with them.
A lot of those guys are going to the NFL too, on all 4 of those teams. Less so TCU, I think. Really, the other 3 are loaded, right, with NFL guys, and that's why I've been rooting for the underdog. Go TCU. Right. Georgia's looks pretty monstrous though. Although look at the points, man. Just the points were insane. Offense, no defense.
Right. So that's always fun to watch. But the most fun for this time of year is certainly the playoff race. So let's take a look at the current at this hour lineup. We're going to be using ESPN's playoff machine, which I think is the best on the internet if you want to follow along.
Right. And it's Monday night before the Monday Night Bills game versus at Cincinnati. So just to clarify here, that's why you'll see as Eric pulls it up that Kansas City is the 1 seed right now because they already won yesterday and the Bills have yet to play. So
so we have not seen the result of the Bills Bengals in this scenario, but we have Kansas City is the 1, Bills 2 at 12-3, Cincinnati's the 3 seed, Jacksonville the 4 seed. Wild cards for the AFC, 5th seed LA, 6th seed Baltimore, 7th seed New England. Moving to the NFC, Philadelphia sits at the top. San Francisco, 12-4, 2nd seed. Minnesota now falls to the 3rd seed. Tampa Bay locks in the 4th seed at 8-8. The 5 seed is locked in for Dallas at 12-4. 6th seed Giants, and 7th seed currently is Seattle. And this is like I said, before the Bills-Bengals game, but before Week 18. So, looking at this matchup, though, which playoff matchup would you like to see? Would you most like to see? and then we'll go to which would you least like to see.
There's two that jump out to me right away, I think. Baltimore, Cincinnati. Obviously, you're talking divisional rival, big matchup. In the AFC, either of those teams could really make a run and have been hitting their stride when you want to the most going into the playoffs. So that matchup is would be a repeat of Week 18, as would the New England Buffalo game. But I think that one ends up a little more lopsided, as we saw last year in the playoffs. So the Baltimore Cincy game, and they play in Week 18 for the division title. That could be an intense, fun game to watch, just because those two teams always duke it out, and division rivals are always going to be tough against each other. And I think either team could win that one on the AFC side. On the NFC side, it's actually, and I can't believe I'm saying this, the Giants at Minnesota. Minnesota has been the luckiest team in the NFL all year, without a doubt, right? Like 10 games by one score or less, 10 comebacks in the fourth quarter. It's been insane. Now, Minnesota's my pick to go to the Super Bowl in the preseason. So I have a rooting interest there. But to me, going into this scenario, Minnesota is one of the most beatable teams on the NFC side.
Right.
All of these teams, I think, have a shot to beat Minnesota. So the Giants could pull off the upset there, and the team that nobody thought would even make the playoffs ends up with a playoff win against, a big team who was really the number 2 team all year in the NFC. So that would be the one on the NFC side that is jumping out to me there.
Yeah, I think for me, and I agree with you. Like, I think Baltimore, Cincinnati's the one.
Yeah.
The most equal matchup that's going to be fun to watch. But for me, I think LA at Jacksonville is a sneaky, good game because you got young quarterbacks dueling it out. Trevor Lawrence certainly looking the part of a franchise quarterback. Justin Herbert certainly looking the part as a franchise quarterback as of late. Both of these guys kind of late risers in the season, and that's kind of what you wanted to see. But both teams are playing really well right now. I think the Jacks. I want to look up their how many they've won in a row. I have it here. Let's see. The Chargers have won 4 games in a row, and Jacksonville has also run 4 games in a row. So that's going to be a good one, right? Because they're both kind of trying to prove themselves.
Yeah, and they're both hot and cold. And
right,
it wouldn't surprise me if one of them stunk and the other one took advantage, right? And it could go either way in that scenario.
For sure. So that's a good one to watch. Least for me is definitely New England at Buffalo because we're going to see them next week. Saw them do this last year where they played the last week of the season, and then the wild card back to back. So we've seen this story. How many times does Buffalo have to beat them to prove that they're the team in this era?
I don't want to see New England in the playoffs, honestly. I don't think they deserve it. So I'd rather have somebody else there.
I mean, if we didn't have the epic collapse from Miami and the epic collapse of the Jets here late, it would be a whole different story. But for the NFC, though, I think Seattle and San Francisco could be good.
Yep.
Especially Brock Purdy. We just don't know how he's going to perform in the playoffs, right?
I would, yes. But I still would take San Francisco. I just think they're just so dominant with the run game and the defense, So I would probably take San Francisco there.
Right. But, I mean, Seattle knows that team. Look, I think San Francisco's looking back when we don't want to play them. Right.
Yeah.
And any Pete Carroll led team, you're just a little nervous about, right?
they're not afraid to pull out all the stops.
They came out and beat the Jets up. They were hyped early.
Yes.
Like it just was.
I picked them. They were one of my pick 6 this week.
They changed their momentum overnight after going to Kansas City and they just looked lethargic and not into it and made a lot of mistakes. But then in 1 week's time, they come out and punch this Jets team right in the face. So you never know what you're going to get from Seattle. They're like the crazy North Korean team. You just don't know what they're going to do. Besides that, pretty standard stuff, right? Dallas at Tampa, interesting.
I think
Dallas. All the
pressure.
It'd be
a good matchup
Dallas.
for Dallas, but yeah, exactly, right? You have to prove you can win in a winnable game.
You cannot lose
even on the road.
Game.
Yeah,
everyone will be fired.
That would be hilarious,
and they're too good for that, right? The Dallas team's really good. If it wasn't for Philadelphia, we'd be talking a lot more about Dallas, right?
And I think Dallas could now still technically win the division with a win next week and a Philly loss. So Philly could go from the first seed to being on the road real fast, I think. Now we can start going through
Giants
the scenarios.
at Philly next week. We had Dallas at Washington, so we'll get to that in a sec. All right, but let's run through this, and so just give me your first thought. We'll go through and pick these games. Just your first thought. I know you haven't had time to do your analysis, so we won't count this as your picks for the week, but just kind of what your gut feeling is for Week 18. But let's start off with the Bills at Bengals. I know you're going Bills.
Yeah, I mean, you got to go with my heart here, right? We're
Yes.
Bills fans. I'm
Right.
picking the Bills in that one, and I really hope it works out tonight. And we'll discuss this in more
Discuss
detail
that
after. But yeah,
for
I
sure.
think the Bills would have the advantage here, and that
Right,
puts the Bills as the 1 seed automatically here.
That puts the Bills in the 1 seed headed into Week 18, where the Kansas City Chiefs take on the Raiders.
Mhm.
Raiders played the 49ers really well last week.
They did.
Do they have a chance here? What's your gut feeling?
I mean, my gut would just say Kansas City.
Yeah,
I would love for the Raiders to pull off an upset, obviously, but gut says Kansas City.
Yeah.
However, we could jump right to the Bills at New England, and of course, we've just talked about that's a pretty lopsided matchup for New England. So I'm going to take the Bills in that matchup,
Yeah.
which immediately switches the Bills.
Going with your gut.
Yeah.
We'll discuss.
It's in Buffalo. That game's in Buffalo. I mean, if it was in
right.
New England, maybe. I mean, but I still think it's lopsided. So give me the Bills all day there.
Right, comes down to momentum and what you're playing for. But Tennessee at Jacksonville.
Mm-hmm.
What's your gut?
Jacksonville. I mean, Tennessee's been playing terrible of late, right? So, and Jacksonville has turned it on, as you've said, 4 straight wins, kind of hitting their stride, finding ways to win either with Trevor Lawrence or with the run game when necessary. And their defense is playing well.
Right, Tennessee. The wheels have fallen off the Titans. Let's see. They have lost 6 in a row.
Epic collapse. Epic.
Yes, that's a lot of games to lose. They don't deserve it. Ravens at Bengals.
Ooh, this is a tough call right here.
I'm not sure if Lamar Jackson's coming back or.
Yes, that's going to be the limiting factor. But I think I'm still leaning towards Cincinnati. I think their offense can take advantage of Baltimore's defense.
Sure, I would agree on that. How about Tampa Bay at Atlanta? Not sure if it matters, but
yeah, I don't think so either. But give me Tampa Bay.
Tampa Bay. Already talked about the Bills. You got the Bills at home. The Vikings at Chicago.
Yeah, the Vikings have been struggling lately, but I'm still going to take them in this matchup. And Chicago doesn't really want to win this game. So as we'll talk about in a bit as well. So I'll take the Vikings.
And Chicago now lost 9 games in a row. So that is the longest losing streak in the league. Texans at Colts.
Well, now we are talking about a game where seeding matters for the number 1 overall pick. Houston has been playing on fire the last 2 weeks. They've been so close. As I said in the preseason, I thought they would play very, very well, but not end up with the wins.
Right.
Man, so this is a winnable game. I'm going to pick Houston to win, actually. I think they win it. Let's
talk about that a little bit, though. If you take Houston, they win, and Chicago loses. Okay, Houston's 2-13-1. Win percentage 156. Chicago's 3-13. Win percentage 188. Houston has the tie.
So then
if Chicago loses and Houston wins, they'll both have 3 wins.
It puts
Chicago would have 14 losses. Houston would have 13. So that would put Chicago in the number 1 spot, right? For the draft.
Yes, it does.
Interesting. Now, does that matter? Because are they going to take quarterback?
Probably not, I would say. I don't think they're going quarterback. Chicago has Fields. They don't need to go quarterback. They could trade for the moon, though, which would hurt Houston, right? And maybe Houston has to now think about, can we trade up from 2 to 1 and let Chicago go and trade 2 if they want to? So it's a great position for Chicago. You have nothing to lose in losing this game, right?
Right.
And
you have all the leverage, trade the 1 and get a slew of draft picks to build your team around Justin Fields. I think they can pull that off. 3, 4, and 5 for the draft as it is right now is Denver, which is Seattle's pick. So Seattle would have 3, Arizona and Indianapolis. Denver, Arizona are both 4 and 12, and Indianapolis 4, 11 and 1.
Yes. So the pressure is on. You see where if Chicago gets that 1, if you're Indy, you could trade up with 1. That package is going to be huge, right? So Chicago their mouth is watering for Houston to win and for them to lose, right? And then they get everything gifted to them all of a sudden. How many first-round picks is it going to take to move up to 1?
Right.
And every team underneath, pretty much, other than Arizona's not an immediate need. It wouldn't surprise me if maybe they took a young quarterback because they need backup when Kyler Murray gets hurt, but also questioning maybe if Kyler Murray's the guy.
And I think, for Houston, though, we've seen what can happen. This matters.
Yeah, it does. And if they win, it's going to hurt.
Well, look what happened to the Jets, right? They had Trevor Lawrence. he's already signing deals, in pencil. But like it just seemed like the Jets were the sure shot number one on that year's draft,
Yep.
and they won one game against LA, and the Jaguars swap it, flip spots with them in the last second, and
Yes.
Jacksonville gets Trevor Lawrence, and now they're in the playoffs, and the Jets are back in the top 5. Like they're not in the top 5.
It's a
But,
lot. So
there's
a
going to be
lot of leverage there.
right.
There's a
There
lot
really
that's
is
going to happen there.
But
Even with the
year,
shitty
there's
games.
not a clear cut number one quarterback, right? But if there's a guy you like,
it doesn't matter.
It matters a lot.
It's very similar to when the Bills took Josh Allen in that draft, right? There were every team that needed a quarterback was in the top 5 pretty much, right? You're like, okay. And it was just a matter of which guy was going 1. The Jets somewhat juked the Bills and traded up to 3 before the Bills could. And then the Bills picked at 5, I think. So
7.
it was 7.
Well,
So it was
they traded up to 7.
Exactly. So by the Jets getting ahead of us, we didn't know they were going to go with Darnold. We don't know if the Bills wanted Darnold or Baker, right?
So if you're Houston,
those
you
two
need
were
that
gone.
quarterback.
You need
big.
to trade. Yeah, that number 1 pick is huge.
But
you want to be able to get your guy, whether you
convincing
don't know.
Players to lose though is just not a thing, right? They got jobs to play for, families to feed,
and the way the Colts have been playing the last few weeks has been downtrending. The way the Houston's been playing has been up.
The Colts, they just want the season over with,
Yes.
So I wouldn't be surprised if Houston wins that and Chicago loses to the Vikings, right? Anyway, let's move on to Jets Dolphins.
Ooh.
Jets are out, right?
Battle of losing
streaks. No playoff implications here, but who are you taking in this one? It's in Miami.
I'm going to take Miami. I do think, they've just had worse matchups against better teams the past few weeks and obviously not having Tua hurt. But I do think they're the better roster than the Jets right now. So, and the state of the Jets mentally after being eliminated, after this run they went on, knowing their quarterback woes, I'll still take Miami in that game.
Okay. Yeah. Again, I think the Jets could win this because the quarterback situation is horrendous. But Miami cannot end the season, though, in a losing streak because they'll just get ran out of town. I mean, they were so good this year, and I don't know what happened. So, just changed. Anyway, we were talking about Miami being the number 1 seed for a little while. Remember that? Anyway, Carolina at New Orleans.
New Orleans is my pick there, but I don't think it affects anything.
Matters
other
there.
than
How about Cleveland at Pittsburgh?
Ooh, this one is interesting, right?
Right.
Oh man,
Pittsburgh hanging on by a thread. There is a scenario where they get in to the 7th seed.
I'm gonna say Cleveland is my gut, so I'll go with that for now.
Yeah, Cleveland's been knocking off some teams,
Yeah.
Giants at Philly. Not sure if we have Jalen Hurts back. Not sure if they'll even play him.
Right, and the Giants have already clinched where they're going to be.
They may rest too, right? They know they have a game. The Philadelphia Eagles don't know if they have a game.
Right. So I think Philly wins that game just because the Giants are probably going to take it easy.
Okay, and Dallas at Washington.
Give me Dallas. Even though I love Washington, I do. The way they're playing right now, we can play with that too and see if does Washington still have a path, or
they're eliminated on 2 Carson Wentz interceptions. They lost last week, so they're eliminated. The Packers win, I think, knocked them out.
Yes,
they've had a couple little losing streak here. Chargers at Broncos.
Chargers. I do think the Broncos, even though they put up a hearty effort, they're not going to beat a team like
the Chargers have momentum right now, so that's
right. And they could still go down a seed even. So the Chargers do want to get that win.
Okay, let's go. Arizona at San Francisco.
San Francisco, definitely. Yeah, I just think.
Yeah, they're playing for late home field. At the 2nd seed, 2nd or 3rd.
Right.
Something to play for there. And Arizona just wants the season over. I think that's what it seems like. LA at Seattle.
Give me Seattle. Yeah.
Seattle on a run. And the big one, flex to Sunday night, Detroit at the Green Bay Packers.
I'm picking Detroit. I've been anti-Packers all season, but I just think Detroit would be the better story there. I want them to win, so I'm going to pick them at first glance here.
Okay, so that's your gut instinct on the picks. Here's our playoff scenario. Bills maintain the 1 seed. They win 2 really tough games.
Mm-hmm.
And they're in full playoff mode already after beating Cincinnati and New England.
Looking forward to the bye that they've earned now for sure.
7 seed Miami sneaks in because of the New England lost.
Very nice. Mm-hmm.
At Kansas City. Maybe get Tua back for that one. We have Baltimore at Cincinnati. That didn't change. Chargers at Jacksonville did not change.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Seattle at San Francisco did not change. Giants at Minnesota did not change. And Dallas at Tampa, that all stays the same. So this is nice. If you're a Bills fan like us, this is great because Miami and Kansas City, Miami with Tua, if they have a chance to knock Kansas City off, right?
Sure. If they're healthy.
I mean,
and we've seen Kansas City struggle against Houston, against,
It sounds like I don't know what I'm talking about because they've lost so many games in a row, and it would be a long shot, right?
Yes.
But if any team could pull an upset in Kansas City in the wild card round, it's these two wide receivers, right?
And if we look at this, I mean, just at quick glance, as a Bills fan, what comes to my mind is, let's say 2, 3, and 4 all win. Kansas City, the Bengals, and Jacksonville all win, right? Jacksonville's the 4 seed in this case, which is crazy because they win the division. So they are the lowest seed would then play Buffalo. That means that would be Jacksonville. And you just change it. If Tennessee wins,
right?
Tennessee ends up the home.
That game is win you're in. Yeah, it's a win you're in game.
Yeah, I would it's the win division. I would probably have a home game against the Chargers most likely, but still, the Chargers as the 5 seed I would rather play Jacksonville or Tennessee again than play the Chargers, but the Chargers are still inconsistent as the 5 seed. Now, again, that's assuming Cincinnati wins over Baltimore, because obviously if Baltimore wins that game, the lowest seed would play the 1 seed, which is the Bills. So the Bills are more likely to play either the Chargers or Baltimore in my mind, in my scenarios of who's winning the games here. And in those 2 cases, we've already beaten Baltimore. We manhandled them in the regular season. So I would be glad to welcome them back. Let's go. Yeah, true. But still, I would still welcome them back. And to Buffalo again, right. I would gladly we played them in Baltimore.
Yeah.
So I would, and the Chargers, although they've been playing better of late, how much have we preached about them being the most inconsistent team in football? You have an excellent roster and you haven't been able to take advantage of it on both sides of the ball. So, and with Herbert still being the young gun there, I like that matchup for Buffalo as well. So that's what immediately catches my eye. Now, should Miami upset Kansas City, that's another matchup that I think favors Buffalo. We know Miami, they know us, but they're coming to Buffalo in January. We've already seen that scenario play out as well.
And that's big.
Yes.
But really, anybody that can knock out Kansas City and Cincinnati, helps Buffalo.
Those are the big, yes, right. We would love to see that. Less likely, but
vice versa for all these teams, right? If Kansas City gets to 1, they're hoping Buffalo gets knocked out. They're hoping the Bengals get knocked out. All right, so let's flip some of these. Let's say Miami loses. Now you have, and Jacksonville loses to Tennessee. Jacksonville becomes a 7 seed. Tennessee would be the 4th.
So they can get in with a loss.
So they can get in with a loss, but that means Miami, New England, and Pittsburgh all need to lose. So that's a long shot scenario.
If Pittsburgh wins, do they become the 7th seed in this scenario? Wow. Yeah. Yes. Okay. So that's their scenario. They need Jacksonville and Miami to lose. That's crazy.
If New England loses, Miami wins, Miami's in. If they all win, New England's in.
Yes. And I don't think, but New England, as long as Buffalo wins over New England, which I think I'm betting as a safe bet to happen.
It's a tough one.
New England is out, right? Well, there's no scenario where if New England loses, they make the playoffs.
You're going to get New England's best shot.
Who cares? Their best shot. Their best shot. We saw it last year. We saw it all season. I'm sick of saying New England can compete with Buffalo. They cannot. Okay? There's no scenario on God's green earth if I'm playing quarterback where New England beats Buffalo anymore. That's stupid talk anymore. I don't care of the scenario, okay? Buffalo wins. It's not happening. So put Buffalo back as the win there. I don't even like looking at that.
All right, let's do this.
So that's the only scenario. New England needs to win and get help to get it.
That knocks Buffalo to 3. Much more realistic. Yeah, it just really depends.
And if Baltimore beats Cincinnati here, then Buffalo would be 2. So there is a lot of shuffling that could happen.
Let's do a funny scenario here where Buffalo beats Cincinnati tonight. The Raiders pull the upset off over Kansas City.
Wow.
Would Buffalo then consider sitting some starters and let New England stick around?
Oh, could. That I could see.
Because
And then what
let's
happens?
get real though. The Chiefs have not been blowing out these bad teams. Yeah, we know they're supposed to be winning these games,
Right.
and they are, to their credit.
It's
Mahomes has done
reasonable to think.
amazing things to get them in a position to win, but it came down to the wire with the Houston Texans, the worst team in the league.
Yeah.
It came down to
And
the wire
last week with the Broncos.
the Denver Broncos, the worst offense in the league.
Yeah.
So
it's crazy.
The way the Raiders played last week, if they can repeat that even just a little bit
against a good defense,
they have a real shot.
And so now what happens if
in Las Vegas?
So now pick Jacksonville to win over Tennessee because that would shuffle it up. Does that knock New England out?
That's a win you're in game.
Yeah. So and it would New England is
So it's Miami, New England, and Pittsburgh all have the advantage over Tennessee.
So this is almost the scenario that New England wants. New England wants Buffalo to be content going into this game as the 1 seed.
Right. So this Raiders game's big.
Yes. But the Bills are playing at 1:00 as well. Is that the Thursday game? That's not.
This is Saturday. Kansas City at the Raiders is Saturday. Mm-hmm. Tennessee at Jacksonville is Saturday. So the Bills likely maybe pull their starters at halftime. If you lock up the 1 seed, don't risk injury.
No, exactly.
Not on the. Not just to spite New England and knock them out of the race, which would be great because the Bills win and New England's out. Right.
Right.
But I think they bench their starters at that point. What other scenarios we got here? So we know it's basically between New England, Miami, Pittsburgh. We could have a little bit of shuffling. Let's say Baltimore beats Cincinnati. Baltimore wins the division, becomes a 3 seed. This is if Cincinnati loses both games versus the Bills and versus Baltimore.
Right.
Baltimore wins the division. Cincinnati becomes the 5 seed. LA bumps down. They now play Baltimore if LA loses to the Broncos. So
interesting.
So really, that's.
So if the Chargers win, though, are they the 4?
They
5
become
seed?
5.
Right.
They're basically locked in to go to Jacksonville. If you're asking me, the odds are really good. They're going to Jacksonville.
That seems to be the case. Or Tennessee, if Tennessee ends up winning.
Right. We could have a Miami loss. Now Pittsburgh gets in if Miami loses, which is very real if you're playing the 3rd-string quarterback. The Jets have been laughed at the last few weeks.
And now
then, New England losing. Now we see Pittsburgh.
So now give me the Bengals winning over Baltimore.
Yep.
And that's just flips that. So the 7th seed, Pittsburgh, man, this is an ideal situation for Kansas City. Even if they lose to the Raiders, they're thinking, oh crap, we're in trouble. Somehow Pittsburgh pulls off a playoff berth and ends up going to Kansas City and giving them by far the easiest team in the playoffs.
And you got to say, outside of the weird Jacksonville scenario, because I really think Tennessee's done. I think Jacksonville's going to lock up the division.
Yeah.
New England's probably the biggest threat to the 2nd seed if they come in at the 7th over Miami at this point, given if Tua's back. But New England's just played better than Miami the past few weeks. And then
with an injured Tua, so even without Tua,
can play well too. But I got it.
Pittsburgh's
Miami can come in and play a good game anytime.
I think Miami is the bigger threat by far.
I just like New England's defense. Mac Jones kills me, but you're right. You're right. Like the firepower of Miami is intriguing.
Yeah, those 2 receivers. I don't care who's their quarterback. That's more threatening than anything in my mind. That Pittsburgh
can't sustain the run game. I just like. I like New England to get lucky, I guess. It's really I just like New England. They're not going to make mistakes. The other team will, and that they could potentially win that game. But I think it's fair to say anybody in the 2nd seed position has a very favorable matchup to any of these teams.
Yeah. It's certainly not unthinkable that Pittsburgh could beat Cleveland. But even if the Jets end up beating Miami, that's what Pittsburgh needs to get in. So that's going to be an interesting one for sure. My first gut was Cleveland though over Pittsburgh. So even though Cleveland isn't really playing for anything either,
if they all lose,
beat division rival, keeping them out of the playoffs.
New England's the default if Miami, New England, and the Steelers lose, and that's assuming Jacksonville locks up the division, which again I'd be shocked if they didn't. But if Tennessee did pull off the win, Jacksonville.
Yeah, this is nightmare scenario for Kansas City, right?
So let's say all AFC teams, all AFC teams vying for the wild card spot lose, including Jacksonville. Jacksonville then becomes the 7th seed.
I like this a lot more just because I think Jacksonville has a better shot at beating Kansas City.
Yeah, but then
The way
LA
they're
gets a
playing
bye
right now.
week.
Yeah, true.
You know?
Tennessee,
Yeah.
and that would mean it, depending on the Baltimore win, the Bills would play Baltimore.
I mean, they could run Derrick Henry. I mean, that's going to be a fun game to watch. The AFC South matchup, Jacksonville, Tennessee, because it's on the shoulders of Jacksonville, like to not screw it up.
Yeah, and it's a Saturday night game. That's definitely going to be prime time there.
I think the New England Patriots have favorable odds to win this, but Miami could sneak in, and I think that'd be a good story. But let's move over to the NFC. A couple scenarios here. Green Bay now has the head-to-head versus Seattle. They have to beat Detroit to get in, but if they do beat Detroit, they have a very high chance of getting that 7th seed.
Can Detroit still get in, or are they eliminated?
So Detroit needs to win, and LA needs to win.
Over Seattle to make them the 7th seed.
Looking around here to see if there's any other scenarios, but I think that's it.
Yeah, I don't think any of the other games are.
Giants are locked in. I mean, Washington's out. Yeah, so I think that it's just down to these 3 teams. It's Seattle, Detroit, or Green Bay. Detroit's at Green Bay, so basically Seattle's got to win to have a high chance, and then head-to-head, Green Bay has the matchup. So
now let's do something crazy.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's say the Giants beat Philly. That's where it gets interesting, because now you have all of a sudden San Francisco going into the 1 seed.
That is
Dallas being the 2 seed, and Philly falls all the way to 5.
Philly goes from 1 to 5. Yep, that's a good
Huge
point, and what a momentum builder for the Giants.
Yeah, and the only other thing there is obviously if the Giants have nothing to play for, no reason to try and move up, right?
Yeah.
They're stuck at 6. So it's interesting scenario though. If they play and they can beat
that's a
Philly,
big swing, huge swing.
Now I like Philly better than the Giants. I think even if it were a playoff matchup, I'd be picking Philly. But it certainly makes things very interesting because it totally shakes up the NFC side.
That's the biggest swing of the weekend for sure. From 1 to 5, Dallas goes from 5 to 2, and San Francisco. Hey, let's say San Francisco loses, Dallas could get the 1 seed, right?
Right. Then Dallas and the Giants win, and Dallas is the 1 seed. I find that much more unlikely, though. I mean, obviously, this is
the probability would be lower on that one for sure.
Yes.
But yeah, definitely interesting scenario. Is there any scenario where the Vikings get the 1 seed? I don't believe there is.
No, because the Philly has the head-to-head, and they have one less loss. So even if the Philly loses,
but if you're asking me, Philly's going to blow out the Giants because the Giants.
I think so too.
Just from a coaching perspective, you had your T-shirt hack game, not your T-shirt hack game, but your playoff clinching game.
Yeah,
you dumped the water on the coach last week. You can't risk your starters just to spite Philadelphia,
especially them. I mean? They're so thin at wide receiver. I mean,
you got to get ready for San Francisco. You have to go into San Francisco. You're gonna have to go into Minnesota. You got to get ready for that. You give them some rest. They've had a hell of a year, so I just think Philly's gonna blow them out. It's in Philadelphia. Philadelphia's
what scenario is this now? So now this scenario has the Giants playing San Francisco. This is if Philly,
San Francisco loses to Arizona.
Loses to Arizona.
Which, again, very unlikely, but definitely possible.
That would be interesting.
This LA game's intriguing because LA played well last week. So that would get Detroit in.
So if Seattle wins, are they automatically in or no? If Green Bay controls their own
Green Bay's in the driver's seat. They win, they're in.
Wow. Good for them to come all the way back and be in the driver's seat with that. Man, I hope the Lions beat them, though. I really want the Lions to beat them.
Yeah. Well, it's just a fun story, right? Yeah. And Lions could beat them. Lions are good. They're really good. And Green Bay's playing hot right now, and it's in Lambeau, which doesn't help.
I'm trying to remember my preseason prediction, but I think it was that I picked Minnesota to win the division. I'm one of the very few, and I think I had Green Bay as a wild card, losing in the first round.
Yeah,
and I know I had San Francisco winning the division. So
also, all of our Super Bowl picks are alive. Buffalo, we both picked Buffalo. And I picked Tampa, barely alive, but alive.
It's there.
And you picked Minnesota.
Yes. So preseason,
all still
preseason. There. That's insane. Yeah, that's pretty good. So I mean, I'll take it. And my NFC championship was Philly and Minnesota, which is very possible right now. Very possible. Because if both win, they're both hosting another home game. So,
but yeah, let's
I'll take it.
so those are basically the scenarios for who gets the wild card. But the AFC is still kind of tricky here because we have the matchup here shortly. And we have Kansas City losing. But if Cincinnati wins, let's assume everybody wins. Yeah. So then this game tonight can knock Buffalo from 1 to 3, even if they win out next week and all teams win. And that comes into play when you get down to the division and championship rounds, right? Buffalo at the 3, they'll probably have to travel to Cincinnati. Let's assume all the top seeds win.
Right.
They'd have to travel to Cincinnati again.
That would be big. Unfortunate. But that's okay. I think the Bills could win in that scenario. I think what's more unfortunate is that Kansas City's the 1 seed and has the bye. This is worst case scenario for our Buffalo Bills.
Yes.
I want Kansas City to play in Buffalo.
Yeah.
That would be amazing.
The one thing is I'm not sure about Cincinnati, but I know Buffalo can go to Kansas City and win.
Yes.
We
know we've seen it happen.
Think Kansas City can go to Buffalo and win.
Exactly. They've never had to, right?
Right.
Is the craziest stat to me is that Pat Mahomes has never played a road playoff game.
And the Bills
other
know
than
that.
The Super Bowl, obviously.
The Bills are well aware of that. It just happens that they have the tougher slate down the stretch here. But if you ask us in the beginning of the season and you're looking at the schedule going, wow, the Chiefs have the Raiders at the last second. They have Russell Wilson and the Broncos,
Yeah.
Those teams just didn't pan out to be anything.
And they still almost beat them.
Yeah. Right.
The Bills couldn't get any help there. It's like, oh, they're in it. They're in it. Nope. Just got our hopes up to just doesn't matter if it's 49-0 or lose by 1. You still we need
Cincinnati's still alive in the 1 seed. They need Kansas City to lose to the Raiders. And they have to beat Baltimore as well. So they have to beat Buffalo and Baltimore. That's a tough stretch.
They would earn it as well. Yeah.
But let's say they all lose and Kansas City wins. Obviously, you'll pick Bengals at home. It's just a flip-flop. So tonight would be a flip-flop from 2 to 3.
Yep.
Or I'm sorry. If the Bills, let's say they lose to New England. That's what I meant to say. No, I did.
Bills are still the
I have
1
Kansas
seed
City loses. Let's say Kansas City wins. Yep.
They're the 1 seed.
So that's right. So if Baltimore loses to the Bills and they lose to Baltimore, they drop to the 6th seed.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And the Baltimore Ravens win the division, and Bills go to 2.
Ugh.
So that's the scenarios.
But still, with Kansas City as the 1, I hate that. That's worst case scenario. So the Bills got to win.
Yeah. So fun game. That 1 seed is just something the Bills haven't had since the early 90s.
Yeah.
So
and there's only one bye now. So that's the biggest thing.
I think as a fan, though, it's hard to not get caught up in that. Like, if the Bills don't get the 1, we're all going to be very disappointed.
Yeah.
But keeping things in hindsight, the Bills can win anywhere. They can beat any one of these teams. I think that's true. The tougher road, isn't the best road for the Super Bowl, but it's a road they can take. They're capable. They like being the underdog. They play well when they're the underdog. So there's a lot to look forward to there.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with the consolation prize being winning the division and hosting a playoff game. Right? That's your consolation prize if you lose out. Right?
The Bills' expectations we talked about all year. It's Super Bowl or bust. It's championship game or bust.
It is.
And that's just the facts.
And there's a ton of tough teams in the AFC, so it's not going to be easy.
Right. And I like the Bills to go to Kansas City more than I like them to go through Cincinnati. I don't think their matchup versus Cincinnati is as good. I mean, even tonight's game, I felt better about the Kansas City game in week, whatever it was, 3 or 5.
Right.
Whatever
when the porous offensive line and we had Von Miller.
Kansas City, you know what you're going to get from them. It's Travis Kelce. Now that Tyreek Hill's out of the picture, it just seems like it's easier to match up against, right? Pacheco, he's a danger. The running backs out of the backfield are a danger, but you kind of know what they're going to do in that way. Cincinnati, they could throw all kinds of stuff at you. They could throw Jamar Chase routes, which is, as good or better than Diggs as far as route running. He's in that conversation. We'll give it to Diggs because he has the years on him, more proof, if you will. more sample size. But Jamar Chase is in that conversation. He's as good as just Stephon Diggs. T. Higgins is a matchup nightmare. I still haven't figured out in my brain who's the best guy to go against T. Higgins. And I know they'll play his own team effort, play loose, and that usually works. But T. Higgins is a nightmare.
Right. I could see a lot of him on
him versus Dane
Johnson
Jackson's
in the middle.
nightmare.
Yeah, right. That's why I would rather him be in the middle. Against.
I mean, Micah Hyde's the guy that I want on the field when I think about T. Higgins, but you don't have him.
Yes, he's out from
Mar Hamlin. It's a team effort, and I understand that's a system, but it just seems like the Bills haven't really. They've played a lot of Tyreek Hills. They've played Jalen Waddles. A guy like T. Higgins, I'm trying to think of an example where they've seen somebody like that, and I just
when your attention is mostly on Chase, obviously, right? So
right.
hopefully Trey White, we've seen him work his way back well and play better the last few games. He's still not, the Trey White we all know and love, the 100% Trey White, but he's getting there, and so I like him to be mostly on Chase. Now the Bills don't do one guy on guy; they play their side mostly. So I don't think that's going to be all day. And
there's Kyrie Elam, a guy you would start.
You have to. You got to at least, Benford is still out. So I think that we will definitely see a scenario where it's Elam on Jamar Chase.
I honestly think you're going to see Dane Jackson. And because of the run game, Dane Jackson's so good at, keeping the run game in front of him, he's a great tackling cornerback.
But Cincinnati hasn't been able to run well lately, right? And the Bills' defensive line, although without Von Miller, has been playing well. Guys have been stepping up. And we know that offensive line is targetable. And they're down now. What is it? The right guard is out, right?
Yep, did see that.
So that's a big deal, right? When you can target it aside like that, and you have guys who can get through and guys who can step up, that's on that defensive line. The counter to that is that Burrow gets the ball out fast, and he has all three of those targets to get it to. You have to keep them covered constantly, or at least give them only the short yardage and tackle, which the Bills have not been great at, right? So if you miss a tackle, those guys are going to burn you for 12 more yards, not 3, right? So it's tough out there. It's going to be a fun matchup, I hope. I'm expecting it to be close. I don't think the Bills are going to win by 20 by any means. But I do think at the end of the day, I don't care what happens. At the end of the day, the Bills are the better team. The Bills have a better defense, a more consistent defense, right? The Bengals defense has good players. The Bills defense is more consistent. The Bills have a better offensive line, a more consistent offensive line, a offensive line that is healthy coming into this game. So the Bengals have weaknesses on the offensive line. That could play a factor in the end. When you're talking about run game, when you're talking about protecting the quarterback, that is going to play a big factor, I think. So no matter what happens in the outcome of the game, even if the Bills end up losing, the Bills are the better team. And if they meet again in the playoffs, you'll see me picking the Bills again for that reason. And the Bills' offense has been clicking better. The run game has been stepping up, which has gone unnoticed by many. It's Josh Allen. Sure, he's faltered in a couple games, but he's also starred. He can be the one to carry the team. And so I'm not worried about the Bills' offense, and I definitely think the Bills have the edge on defense. So ultimately, they're going to score points. Bengals are going to score their points. They're going to make us look stupid on some plays because Burrow is capable of that with those 3 weapons he has, not to mention the dump off to a guy like Mixon could be a big play. But I just think scoreboard at the end of the day will reflect that the Bills win. And if it doesn't, it doesn't mean the Bengals are better than the Bills.
And I think the Bengals are riding high. They beat Kansas City. They're 3-0 versus Kansas City in the last 2 seasons. That's something to be proud of. Whatever it is, the way they play them, the matchups, whatever it is, they have Kansas City's number. So I think you saw a little bit of chirping this week that where Cincinnati thinks they're the top dog, right? And they have the right to think that.
They do.
But the Bills have been in these tough games. They've played in all these tough games at Kansas City. They've won at Kansas City. They beat Baltimore this year. They beat, Tennessee. We're looking at a Bills team that is, 2 very easy plays away. If the Bills stop the clock in Miami with 1 second on the clock, they likely win that game on a Tyler Bass field goal. For Minnesota, if they don't fumble in the end zone and just fall forward for 1 yard, you're looking at a 1-loss team. The Jets beat them straight up. you're looking at a one-loss team, and we'd be saying a lot more things about this Buffalo Bills team and how good they are.
And they'd already have the 1 seed, and this game wouldn't matter. So that would be
just say careful with Cincinnati, because this Bills team, when they're playing hot, nobody can beat them. They scored 35 points or 29 points in one half versus Chicago. I mean, when they get hot, they're real hot, right? So Cincinnati just got to be ready for that. And
I don't
know
if
they've
mistakes.
played. I mean, they haven't played Josh Allen. They don't know.
Yeah. We haven't seen a Burrow-Allen matchup, which is exciting.
So this is why it's so fun, and this is why the NFL is great. And we know these teams are going to see each other again. It's likely they might, take different
even if
paths.
they both win the division.
I don't think anybody today would be shocked if it's a Cincinnati Bengals Buffalo Bills championship game in the AFC.
Nope.
So it's a little taste of that tonight, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So, final score prediction.
I hadn't thought much about this, but I'm gonna go high. I'm gonna say the Bills win it 31-24.
Okay, comfortable. I'm gonna go
close, still close.
35-17 Bills. Look, Bills know what's ahead of them. This is their conference, right?
Yes.
They got embarrassed in Kansas City, went head to head with them, and played. They had the perfect football game last year. It was their year. They want what Cincinnati had. Cincinnati, thinks they're the top dog in the conference. They've been chirping a little bit this week. The Bills are paying attention to that. The Bills have faced all challenges this year and succeeded in, all but a few,
playing the underdog, right? And Josh Allen in prime time, right? This is Josh Allen has been on fire in these prime time games. Monday Night
I just don't know if Cincinnati's seen something like that before.
I don't think they have. And even our defense, I don't think they've seen a defense that plays like ours, right? The Bills will give up points, but they are consistently in your face and intense the entire game, right? So they've been able to since he's been able to take advantage of the division.
Right, and the Bills have been the best pass defense in the league for a number of years now. This is nothing new. They've seen it all. They want them to air it out, and I think Cincinnati certainly tries to do that, especially with their right tackle, Lyle Collins being out. They're going to try to use their strength of their team, which is Hayden Hurst, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, local hero. They're going to try to air it out, but this pass defense is ready, right? They're always prepared in the pass D. Name one game where they've been embarrassed in the passing game outside of a playoff game. It just doesn't happen. You get embarrassed in the run game once in a while. Yeah. Maybe that's the game plan for Cincinnati. But if you're asking me,
but they haven't been able to run at all, right? And they haven't been running at all. So
if you're asking me, they're going to want to see the Joe Burrow versus Josh Allen, and Cincinnati is going to be really confident in their air game, and they're going to game plan that, right? So I like the Bills.
I hope it works out. I like your guess. I like your prediction.
So, all right. So let's get at it. Good to see everybody again. Thanks for tuning in. Check out all our picks on the Huff Podcast or the Huff Pod on Twitter. Anthony Romeo, New York. It's on the screen here at Anthony Romeo, New York, and it's just NY. And be sure to tune in. Check out our stuff on YouTube. We promise we'll get you more content. Hang in there. Going through some transitions here, and we're going to get back to it, but hang in there.
Go Bills and toss your hat in the ring.